shifted now, but it's a
Ann-Marie, what are your thoughts here?
Sorry.
As a meeting children and students.
No, but I want to raise the question: what is a school, and what is a teacher? I always carry the question: what is a school? And I think tomorrow's school is a meeting place, and where we talk, think, perform, act, and join in learning. And the teachers, if I'm a teacher, I'm also a part of this. Give text and a broad way of joining in what text is, because text is so, and it's in the curriculum really. The text, the wide, but we have to look into it much better and have more discussions around this. But what is a school, and what will we do in 10 years, and what will we do now? Because children, they are now supposed to be quiet, and they are reproducing what teachers say, and teachers are not free to act in learning. So I'm kind of worried, really. And I think the social meeting place is a very, very good place in a school for young children to meet generations and meet readers, meet computer games, constructor, everyone, a meeting place.
What are your concerns, Trevor?
Thanks. Oh, there are many. Something that you've been talking about as well, the idea of producing. And again, sorry to harp on about Seymour Papert, but he was talking about this years ago. We talk nowadays of pupils as clients and customers, and parents are customers and consumers. And Papert was asking the question back in the 90s. Do we want consumers in the classroom? And a consumer basically, you produce something and they passively choose to take it or not take it. What we need is producers in education. We need kids to define their own terms and define their own questions, but they're not able to. And when it comes to the computer games, I mean, there's an awful lot of research going on in France at the moment, which doesn't seem to have reached here yet, where they've been using a computer game called The Number Race with preschool kids, 4-year-olds, in very deprived areas. And children in those deprived areas, generally speaking, tend to have difficulties with mathematics. And they've discovered that they could increase number sense dramatically in those children, and ultimately improve their results in mathematics. So, I mean, there we have, I think, some clear evidence of how computer games can definitely enhance learning. But I don't know how many preschools in Sweden would be willing to even have the idea of 4-year-olds sitting down with computers and playing pedagogical computer games, but it seems to work. One aspect from my research and my colleague Leonard Grossin's research, which we have not published yet, but which is very worrying within the field of effective schools, in a longitudinal study that we've carried out here in Sweden, the schools that were most successful in terms of how the system looks today, in other words, the kids were producing the results that the system wants them to produce. The teachers were very pleased with the pedagogical and social climate in those schools. Everything worked the way it should. The children in every single school, pretty much every school, were not happy at all. So it seems we have a system we're giving the system what it wants, but we have children who are saying, I'm not very happy here. And as I say, we haven't published it yet because this is probably a little bit sensitive to bring up in Sweden. We want to do a lot more analysis of the data first. But we seem to have a bit of a problem here between what kids are happy with and what the system is asking. And teachers need to be, which a few people have said now, we need to loosen the belt and let teachers be teachers. They are professionals. They are qualified. And yet we have a system that's saying you've got to write down this and write down that and do this and do that and do whatever we tell you to, instead of just letting them be teachers and trusting them. This is something that Pasi Sahlberg talks a lot about, that we in Sweden at the moment, we're right in the middle of this global education reform movement, which shortened becomes GERM. It's a germ, and it's destroying learning. At the same time, as you're saying, we have the steering documents in Sweden are very explicit that we should have this very broad curriculum. But the demands of the system are something entirely different. There just isn't the time. Most teachers don't have the time to just sit down and plan collaboratively, from my understanding anyway, talking to teachers. Because at the end of the day, you've got to sit down in front of a computer. Sometimes they're sharing that computer with 5 other teachers, and they've got to document what they did with the day. So teachers need to be allowed to be more creative, and we need to trust schools, leave schools alone. Yeah.
We need to really value our teachers, and it's one of the key messages that certainly that John and I talk about, is that we really need to professionalise, and that's obviously what they have done in Finland as well. But we need to really take responsibility as a profession to really professionalise ourselves, so we can actually show our government and our authorities the really fantastic work that we're doing.
But then you have to give teachers the freedom to do that. And they don't have that here today. No,
I don't think you should give all teachers the freedom to do that, because I think teachers have got to earn that, and I think some teachers. I mean, I go into the good, the bad, and the ugly of schools around the world, and I would be very worried about some teachers being given a free rein. I think there needs to be a
I'm not saying that.
I think there needs to be a system whereby you acknowledge that teachers have reached particular. I'm not going to say standards because that's not what I mean, but that they can do their job well. So just, because most teachers just want to be left alone. Some teachers actually need to be supported in what they're doing. And others do need to be left alone, and there needs to be a system that acknowledges that.
Collaboration. We need to, was it Leighton, the Dutch researcher who said back in the 90s that teachers are a group of autonomous individuals who share a heating system. They come to work in the morning, they have a cup of coffee together, they go into the classroom, close the door, and do what they've been doing for 10, 20 years. I think if we opened up schools and it was just the most natural thing in the world for teachers to wander in and out of each other's classrooms and observe and give each other feedback, and they could collaborate with each other. So at the end of the day, instead of having to document what happened during the day, they could sit down and talk. I think teachers who maybe need a little bit of, help along the way, they can get it from each other. I think it was Dylan Williams said years ago, the group in society best suited to developing teachers is teachers. So I agree with you. I'm not. I've met some. I had one teacher in a project school who said, "I've been a teacher for 40 years, and if I'm going to let other teachers into my classroom so that they can see my pedagogical secrets, then I want to get extra money." I mean, that guy shouldn't be working in education.
Ulf.
Well, we're getting into the role of the teacher, and then, of course, it's important to reflect on what is a professional teacher and what can we do in order to support a professional teacher. I think, first of all, a professional teacher, as was said earlier, is not a person who's looked into the classroom. It's a person that is open for different kind of ideas and open to take part in discussion. And that's important that these things are provided by those who employ teachers, and that you organize things in such a way so that teachers have this possibility. But at the same time, I mean, we're talking about the professional freedom of the teacher, which I think should be rather big. I think we also need to realize that there is a need to have a curriculum. I mean, there is a need for society to in some way say these are the objectives, and there's also a need for teachers to work in the same direction. Because one thing that is very clear in all kind of research about what makes quality in education is that if students get clear directions what to do, and if the teachers have high expectations on the students, these are very important things. And in order to be able to have these expectations, in order to be able to work in that direction, you need to have common goals that you work together around. So I think that's important to find a way to combine trust in the teachers, and have professional teachers, well educated, but at the same time also have joint goals, joint objectives in curriculum that you work around. And of course, in that context, it's very important then for the professional teacher to work with assessment. And I mean, a bit talked here about assessment in 2 ways. I think both are important. One is to have assessment for the teacher to assess him or herself in order to develop his or her work. And the other one is, of course, also and that's related to the work of the teacher, and to be able to help the student to find a way. I mean, because the teacher, the professional teacher, need to have a plan. School is not just a place where people just pop in and you have interesting meetings. It's also a place where you have activities going in a certain direction, and the teacher as the professional need to have an idea about how to do these things, need to have a plan. And in order to see that this plan is working, the teacher need to have permanent assessment going on, sometimes formative, sometimes summative, but all the time going on in different ways. And it has to be used by the teacher in order to develop the work, but also be used in dialogue with the students. And of course, the teacher should be able to criticize the students. I mean, we should get into discussion with teachers that are just allowed to say that students are doing well, but not all students are doing well. And it's a false message, and students usually realize when you're telling them a lie that you say it's going well, it's not going well. You should be able to tell students that these are things you need to do better. But the important thing is, how do you do these things then? Because you can do them in different ways. You can do it in such a way that you destroy the self-confidence of a student. You can also do it in a way that you help them to build up it. So I think there are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration when we talk about the professional teacher and what that teacher need to do. But it's not the kind of laissez-faire idea that the teacher is just doing whatever he or she would like to do, and this is just coming in, meeting students, and then they get an idea what to do. There need to be planned, there need to be a way of working with it.
I think we have several people who wanted to say something. Lisa, you wanted to say something some minutes ago, I think. But
that's the funny thing when you sit like it, because when you get your thought, 5 or 6 people come between and the discussion has sort of drifted away. But I was thinking about the teacher profession again, and one thing that I find a bit amusing, actually, is that we talk so much about the digital tools and the possibilities of making the teaching social, and the situation that the kids can share between each other. They can sort of spread their ideas throughout the world. But we talk very little about the sharing and the social aspects of the teachers. And there is one huge study going on at the moment called Innovative Teaching and Learning, which I know Ulf knows lots about, which shown one of the conclusions there was that they see that the difference between teachers in a school is bigger than between schools. So this is one really, really important issue, I think. If there is something that is going to change ever, teachers need to start talking to each other, and they need to get the possibilities from their principals. You need to organize so many things so that not everything is just built on enthusiastics. Because that is what it's very much like today. And to be able to really change the system, get school development out of this, we need to change that. And the steering documents don't limit that in themselves. They give lots and lots of possibilities. It's just that there are other things surrounding the organization that limits for the teachers.
Yes, Emily, do you agree, Hattie? Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with you can't just, it's not laissez-faire in a school, because it's a very serious place to be. And the curriculum is something we have together with the students, with the teachers, all of us. And I went to New Zealand, got an education there, and we daily had a meeting, all the teachers and the principal, talking about what we did as teachers. And I couldn't participate. I was like, I didn't have the, what am I doing? What my role? And the principal told the teachers that we have to raise up. Yeah. And every day they were talking about what happened in the classroom and what is my profession here. And it was very, very interesting to join. And I would love to have those discussions in Swedish school daily, so we can develop, and then we can use the curriculum and talk together around things, not just looking at children and complaining about them, or look for if there's something wrong. I want to teach, and I want to learn, and I want to be a learner among children.
I guess I've been a little bit surprised by listening to the discussion, and obviously some of the some of the challenges that you face here, and far be it from me to say I come from a system that's fantastic, because it's got its problems as well, like all systems have. But I come from a school system where teachers talk about teaching, where they collaborate and are given time to collaborate for planning, where kids talk about learning, not about what they're doing, where student voice is welcome and sought, where classroom doors are open and teachers walk in and out. There are two key things I notice about schools that I go to in New Zealand, well, anywhere really, that are really successful. Number one, the principal is the instructional leader in the school. They are the leader of learning in the school, and they are at every meeting that I would be part of. And number two, it doesn't matter where I walk to in the school, nobody even bats an eyelid. It's a New Zealand expression, but nobody takes any notice. It's just totally deprivatised. And it doesn't mean that anybody's being judged. In fact, there is no accountability as part of it. It is totally collaborative. So coming from a system like that, how have we managed to build a system like that? We have no national testing at all, and we've got a philosophy of building the capacity of our teachers from the ground up. So let's give our teachers the tools and the freedoms to be able to have those discussions, and let's acknowledge the ones that are doing a fantastic job, but let's also work with the ones and collaborate in our school with the ones who need support. And for a lot of schools that can be quite a journey. So, and that's, I guess, the work that we're doing, and the work that I do with John is really looking at how we can work with other schools and other systems that are wanting to do something very similar. But it's quite a different paradigm, I think, to what we're talking about here. So,
did you say you lived in heaven?
Anna, you are living in a classroom here in Sweden. Do you agree with what has been presented here? What is your opinion?
I've been looking at New Zealand a lot and reading a lot about New Zealand, and I don't know if you have been looking at their assessment tools they have on their website. They have examples, literacy development, for example. They have examples for grade 1. This is what a grade 1 learner should be able to write, and
it's an example.
Yeah. Yes. And it's not only the language; it's the structure of the text, and it's all aspects of it. And it's really good help for a teacher, I think.
But we have them in dance and drama and technology as well. Yes.
All of them. It's a real good tool, and we don't have that in Sweden. Not that explicit. And I think it goes because I know your teachers in New Zealand, they teach more explicit than we do. And I think it's the same about the curriculum. You teach the teachers the curriculum more explicit than we do, if you understand what I mean.
What's your reaction on this?
Well, this comparison Sweden and New Zealand often comes up.
Does it?
Yeah, well, Swedes love to compare themselves to New Zealand, and especially love to make study tours to New Zealand. even more than Finland for some strange reason.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I feel better.
And that it's always good to travel somewhere and see something. But I think we should also. Sometimes we are too modest about ourselves. If you look at, I'm working with PISA, and I've been looking into many of these international tests. In the recent PISA studies, Sweden is behind New Zealand, but if you look at over time, Sweden has been on the same level as New Zealand, and we have been much better than New Zealand in one respect, which we not seldom think about, and that is to take care of the weak students. New Zealand has had much bigger problems with weak students than Sweden had. So what has happened in Sweden, which probably hasn't happened in New Zealand, is that we have lost the capacity, the ability to take care of the weak students, because they are getting larger and larger amount of students. And that used to be the strength of the Swedish school system, and that's now one of our weak points. And there we used to be even better than New Zealand. Nowadays, New Zealand has actually...
So just be careful with that, because we've had a real focus on the weaker students in New Zealand, and now what we're finding in our PISA results is that our top kids are not making the progress that we would be expecting, but our bottom kids are making huge progress. So we've kind of got a bit of a flat line, like Australia as well. So
you used to have a long tail.
No, we keep talking about our long tail. We've all got long tails in New Zealand.
Martin, as I understand it, you've been working with school development, questions about school development, haven't you? How to make this happen then? And she's not living in heaven, I think.
It has been mentioned today earlier, but I think one key factor is the principals or headmasters. If they're not on the boat, you will have problems, because there should be pedagogical leaders, but they don't have the time for that. They have too many other things to do, so they leave the teachers working laissez-faire almost. So if we can get a system with the headmasters being in the driving seat, I think that would help a lot, actually.
Yeah. And that comes up to one of the other questions that were posed before this seminar. What is the situation when you learn the best? And what is the kind of situation we want to create within this school then? Because we have found things to criticize. We have found things that ain't that good that it could be. And we have seen examples of it. Yeah, it's always much better on the other side of the fence.
What are you doing really well, and how can you learn from that?
Yeah. But what is a good learning situation? Trevor?
Sorry. I think we should be very careful before we start defining the best learning situation, because you have a group of individuals in the classroom, and you have a teacher who's also an individual in the classroom. And there's no method of teaching that's going to work the same for all teachers. There's the method that works for me right now with these pupils. And maybe this morning I didn't feel so well and I had another bunch of pupils, so I used another method. I think we know quite a lot about learning. The OECD came out with a very good report in 2010, The Nature of Learning. It's very good. It's a starting point. But I just think we should be careful about this. When does learning happen best? What's the best environment? And then we're going to create this, and we're going to package it and send it out to all the schools and all the municipalities in the country. Learning is so incredibly individual. I understand that we need to create an environment that encourages learning. I would say then we need to create an environment in every classroom that encourages pupils to take risks and encourages teachers to take risks. If we want creativity, I agree 100% that you need to have goals and common goals, etc. But just this idea that there is one situation in which learning takes place best, I think we really need to be careful about that. And we do that a lot in school, in education policy and in school development. We're all looking for that silver bullet, and there is no silver bullet. And that's part of the complexity and part of the difficulty with education, as I see it.
And part of the quality as well, perhaps.
And definitely a quality, absolutely.
Well, I have a hard time to distinguish the first and the second question, actually, because when does learning really occur? When motivation and creativity is there. So I just would answer that again. Create situations, tasks, setups where students can use their productive agency, and like you said, let them be, or create a kind of atmosphere where you dare make mistakes and test out various things, and also focus more on formative assessment. And there I have to add about assessment that a main reason for there being much more standardized summative assessment and not as much formative assessments as we would like is that formative assessment requires more time and more resources. It takes time. And that is actually my point about the educational games. Why they can bring this information, it can bring it, for every student to the teacher. They play this math game, this history game, and you get the information that is interesting and that you can also use in a discussion between teacher and student. And the student, they played this history game, and we see where did this challenge arise, or where couldn't I any longer get any further, at which stage, what level couldn't I make progress so easily and why? So you can discuss these things. It is relevant for students, it's relevant for teachers, and we assess more interesting things.
Yeah, thank you. Susanne, you wanted to add something on this one, I think.
Yes, I was going to say something else, but now I want to say something about education and games instead. I've read a lot of research about education and games, and I think it's so interesting. And also, something that's always pointed out is that pupils, they love this, and they learn a lot, and they are motivated, and it's creative and everything, and they love doing it in school, but they would never do it at home, because then they would not choose the educational games. And I think that's interesting. And there is some research, among others, on Stockholm University about, for example, using World of Warcraft in the school. And that's something that I think is very interesting. But that's not what I was going to say from the beginning. Because what I wanted to say was that... now I forgot it.
Yeah,
I forgot.
Agneta want to say something, and she will probably help you.
Yeah.
But no, but what you just said now, I'm not sure. I wouldn't see that as a problem really. That there's a difference.
No,
Like
it's more like interesting.
Yeah,
not a problem.
educational games. Because if educational games are very similar to the commercial games, then the students also this is not what I'm used to. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, school teachers are professional, and school has uppdrag. What is that in English? Mission. School has a mission. There are certain things that we are doing in school, and that can really. I mean, I'm not at all just. I mean, I do work with education and technology, but perhaps I'm the most critical here and the most enthusiastic. I don't think that the digital as such is interesting at all for school. It's really that the digital technology should serve the purposes and the missions of school, and not the other way around. Just because we have computers, we have to do various things on them. And nothing gets better just because you bring in hardware. It has to be the right kind of stuff on them, the dedicated software. And I'm interested in educational software.
That's true. And that's actually what I was going to say something about. And because you were talking about when is a learning situation the best. And it's obviously impossible to say, but something that I can see in my research material is that when pupils are allowed to use the digital tools they are used to use or that they want to use, they learn. And then when it comes to, perhaps they are used to using internet and mobile phones and chatting and using iPads or whatever during the work area. But then when there is a test, they are most certainly, not always, but often they are not allowed to use these digital tools, which they are actually used to use all the time. Suddenly they are supposed to use a pen and a paper, but they normally don't even use pen and paper. They just put the notes down in the iPhone or something. And that's a problem, I think, because then they are almost like handicapped, because then they're not really used to writing a text and using a rubber if they don't want to, if they want to change the text, for example. And then you have some really funny presentations from pupils where the texts are like, they are sort of writing things and then they are putting marks that I want to use that there, and that's not really fair. So that's just something I would say.
Yeah, Trevor, please. You wanted to add something there?
Yeah, a couple of things about that with computer games and kids. One thing that we are really good at here in Sweden, that's Swedish television. The Swedish national television have a fantastic website for kids that my daughter started using when she was 2. And when she was 4, and we were coming home from swimming school one day, she said, Daddy, I have a hypothesis about why ostriches run so fast. And her answer was that they had long legs. And I said, now she was 4. I said, Stella, what do you mean when you say hypothesis? And she got really frustrated and she said to me, Daddy, it's an idea that somebody wants to test. And I said, well, yes, it is. But where did you learn this from? Bolibompa webben. She'd been sitting down at my computer and she'd watched this over and over again. This is a demonstration of deep learning as well. She knew what a hypothesis was, she could explain it, and she could transfer it. And I would say this with kids and not wanting to work with pedagogical computer games then at home. I must say, again, it's nothing scientific, but it's my own personal experience. She loves nothing more than to come home and play these games. Maybe it's because she's taken the step from the TV stuff on their website over to these, they use a lot of pedagogical computer games in her school. And I have to tear her away from them. And on a Friday evening, you know, I'm trying to say, listen, we're going to watch TV and we're going to eat ice cream and we're going to have fredagsmys. And she's, no, I want to do my homework. And I'm like, no. So, because she absolutely loves this. When she comes home and when she has time, she chooses to do that. So I think that's something I would love to see schools, maybe you're not allowed to suggest that, but schools working together with SVT, because this is a fantastic resource that we have here, these games online for kids on SVT. So plugging the national TV station there, sorry about that. I don't work for them and I'm not paid by them.
I would like to go back to the New Zealand experience with talking about the teachers to join in a teaching discussion inside the school with the teachers. And I had a great experience from that in New Zealand, and advice and curiosity from the principal, who was following everybody and what's happening in the school very closely. So I guess, and also about computer and internet and everything that children play, games. I have never ever had a classroom where I could use technology. But I asked my children, what do you need? I want them to read and write and express themselves and get a lot of language. So they became readers of books because they could transform the ideas from the books into games. And I had a class that all boys were reading and collaborating with the books. And it was a way to go through what do you do when you're home. You're constructing games or playing games, and you need a lot of language. So this is language, and let's start with this. And it was very funny, really. So you have to do everything you can.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I'm working with the Swedish PISA study, and in 2009 the students were then tested in two ways, both the traditional test on reading on paper and pen, and then the test where they were supposed to read pages on the web, and we refer to that as traditional reading and digital reading. And what I've been doing now during the autumn, together with colleagues from Mid-Sweden University, is trying to look at what are the characteristics of the good readers in this area. And first interesting thing is that, we wanted to look at those who were good digital readers and compare them with those who are good traditional readers. That didn't work because that doesn't exist. There are very few that are good in one thing and not good in the other thing. There's a very high correlation. If you're good in one thing, you're good in both things. So what we need to look at are the good general readers who are good at both reading on paper and good at reading digitally, and those are weak readers in both places. And then we try to look at a number of things what are the difference between them. And I perhaps shouldn't say this because we still are analyzing it, but there are strong hints when we're looking at it that one thing that is different between these two groups is that the strong readers, they read much more books than the others. And they're strong in both reading digitally, using a computer, and reading on paper. They read much more books than the others. And another difference between the two groups is that those who are the weak readers tend to play much more computer games than others. And I'm not trying to say that computer games generally are bad things. I think there may be good ones. But I think we need to be very careful when we talk about these things, because there's a huge variety of quality here, and some that are not useful at all. Probably there are useful ones, but we need to be very careful. On the other hand, reading books seems to be a more general thing that support both reading on the computer and reading on paper. And if we look at the habits of children, we can see that, I mean, almost all children today spend time in front of the computer, spend much more time in front of the computer than they read books. So probably when we talk about what is good to stimulate is to see that children read in a traditional way more, because that seems also to be not only useful to be able to read books and papers and newspapers, but also generally useful for reading it in generally. And that's something to do less. So there may the school have even more of a challenge than try to get the students to use computers.
Yeah. And this raises a lot of questions and hands as well. But I think we should try to sum up in a way now. Time flies, you know. I would like to start with you, Anna, and I would like you all actually to think about, because again we have talked about the obstacles, the challenges, some of the problems as well, but to end up with examples of good examples from what you have experienced being in school or experienced from working in the school, good examples of interesting, fascinating learning situations, learning things, and why these are interesting, of course. And then you could add your reflections about other things as well.
I think a really good example, and now I talk as a teacher, is that when I go into my classroom, I am a model. I model how I read, I model how I write, how I talk, how I ask questions, and we learn together all the time. And I think I have to be really explicit in how I model this. I have to put words on how to write a certain text, or how we communicate that my language is different when I talk here than I do with my children at home, and it's quite different if I write or if I speak. And I have to give my students or pupils a meta language, just the same as the teachers need a meta language to talk about their profession. And I think it's a good example because this works. I do this with my children, my students, and I really believe that we should use more explicit teaching than we do in Sweden today.
Mm-hmm. Agneta, what would be your good example?
Good examples. Well, I wish I could have brought here, show you the prototypes or also some finished educational games that have been produced in my group, and together with films of students using them. So far we specialize mostly in math games and history games. And so I'm very optimistic because I see what is possible, and much more is potentially possible. There is such a, the added value. There are things that you can do for learning, ways that you can support students' learning that are either impossible or very hard to do traditionally or non-digitally. And that, of course, is extremely interesting. And I'm right there in this development field, and I see the nice examples of how students really can profit from this. And we also have more research, long-term research, seeing that actually students who otherwise, and not all, but there are too many students in Sweden who have actually a hard time to get the idea of the 10-base system. It is a bottleneck for mathematics. It's well known. It's not just Sweden, it's everywhere. And there are too many students who never really get this, and they lag behind forever. They never get into maths. They cannot cope with that. And we have seen when we have many schools and then control schools or even classes at the same school, blah, blah, blah. And we see, yes, we can really make a difference. So yes, I'm full of good examples, and I'm optimistic for the future.
That's good. That's really good. Ulf, what is the example that you want to share with us?
Well, I think you should be careful with giving examples, because examples may be too much steering. I think what is important is that teachers have high expectations on the students. I mean, that's crucial in order to support learning. I think also it's important that teachers have a clear structure for the teaching. And they have an idea, they have a plan, and they work according with that plan. They use assessment in order to follow the plan. And it shouldn't be a rigid plan. We can always change a good plan. But what's good with the plan is that you know that you're changing a plan. Then I think concerning methods, I think there should be a variation of methods. I think what was said earlier, the students are different. And that's obviously a reason to have different methods, but it's also another reason, because different subjects, different areas are also different. Some things may be better thought another way than in that way. So there's always an idea to have a variation. And I think sometimes the problem in education in schools is that you're rushing from one model to another model. I mean, one time everyone was teaching, giving lectures, and of course that had been heavily criticized. And then we've been moving into a model where you have much more group work, you have much more unstructured education, where the students decide what they like to do themselves, etc., etc. And then probably that will come to an end. And then, of course, it's important not to rush all the way back to the other model, but to find ways that it can combine different ways. But then crucial in order to combine things is that there's supposed to be structure, there's supposed to be plan, there's supposed to be an idea how we work. And that's the crucial thing. And that's to come back to the word of professionalism. That's the professionalism for the teacher, to have this structure, this plan.
Debra.
Yes, I agree that we do tend to kind of lurch from one good idea to the next, and you can be quite sure that if your Minister for Education or Secretary for Education wakes up with a brilliant idea tomorrow and puts it into practice, it will work. 95% of everything that we do in schools actually works, and the thing that we look at most is what actually works best. So the structure and the thinking that we have put around teaching and learning is around asking schools to have a self-review model, a review model that is based on the visible learning research. So we actually are inquiring into what are we doing in our schools. So it's a one-size-fits-one model. So how can we make sure that we're providing formative evaluation to teachers about their teaching, which is has one of the highest effects? How can we be sure that we're giving and receiving really good feedback to and from our students? How can we have students who are assessment capable, who are integrally involved in teaching and learning? And what are the processes and the systems we can put around that happening? And that's really kind of the basis of what we do. So, you know, it was really interesting. I've been in Norway today, and John Hattie is talking over in Norway today, and he's here tomorrow. And there's a lot of criticism in Norway at the moment because they think that John Hattie and visible learning is going to be this big wave that goes through Norway. And people have missed the point, because what our research is not another great idea, because we've had enough of those, to be fair. It's really, let's take the research and the evidence and say what works best and how can we actually then integrate that within our schools and for our learners. And that's the really exciting part of the work I do. So if I'm looking at the very, very best school that I would work in, one springs to mind immediately. And it's a principal who is a leader of instruction in the school. She's a leader of learning. The kids are purposefully engaged. They're using technology as part of what they do. They collaborate on Google Docs. That's the platform they've chosen to use. It's just all part of it, part of the system. And that's our vision, really, for education right around the world. That's what we'd like to see.
Thank you. What would you like to see, Trevor?
What I would like
What
to
is
see.
your example?
My example, I really wish I could come up with some wonderful example, something that was so positive.
Please do.
All I can think of right now, for some reason, is Alexander Bard. Now, Alexander Bard is seriously, I mean, he's a philosopher and an internet sociologist, and he works at Handelshögskola in Stockholm. And he made a very good point at a conference in Berlin. So this whole idea with technology and the internet, and it provides so much. He said, you know, about 80% of what's on the internet, I won't use his language because it's, you know, I don't want to go on record as saying it, but it's rubbish. You know, what's on the internet, 80% of it is rubbish. But as he also said, 80% of the books that were published throughout history have also been rubbish. And we need to learn, and we need to teach our kids how you filter out the rubbish and get to the good stuff. Good examples. I can actually only really come up with one right now, and that is I did my master's degree at the IIE, where you are.
Okay.
Yeah, I had Holger down as my supervisor. That was one of the most creative and collaborative periods of my life, and I wish everybody could visit that institute, because it was absolutely phenomenal. I wouldn't mind working there. It was wonderful. Just.
We'll discuss this afterwards.
Your job it was.
But when I, for the first time, I didn't do so great in school because I was too interested in, reading Oscar Wilde and Shakespeare and stuff under the desk. I wasn't lazy, I just read the wrong books. And I'd never been in a learning environment that was collaborative and where you could put your hand up and say something that maybe would be absolutely crazy, but it was fully accepted. So that was a wonderful example, and I'm just very sad that I had to wait until I was 38 years of age to experience it. I wish all kids could get to experience it a lot earlier.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
No, variation, vad heter det?
Variation.
Variation, very simple. Yeah, old ideas, new ideas, everything, try it. When you are among children and learners, try everything. And read books loud, modeling how you write a lot, talk a lot, go on Google Docs, write, everything we can do. And I met a young boy who was looking at his teacher had made a picture from inside the body, with his pen on the vad heter tavla? Blackboard. And he was on his computer trying to find on the pictures something that was looked like the teachers. So he had a bunch of photos and things that he looked through to pick out the one who was almost the same as the teachers. And he was so much a learner there because he had a lot of what to shoes and And it's a lot of learning all the time in classroom. And I want us to be open-minded, to look at what are they doing, and they are trying to understand, and how are they trying to understand. And we could follow them. And we need a curriculum to talk around and to take out what to do and to ha gemenskap, vad heter det? Gemenskap. Yeah. Okay. We need a curriculum, and I think we should own them, like inside, and act. Yeah.
Lovely. Before going on to the last three ones here, please prepare yourself, because there will be a couple of minutes for questions, and there will be time for you as well, hopefully.
Yeah, I'll keep it short then. Let me take an example from my lecture this morning in my upper secondary school. Some of us praised Pappert earlier today and tonight, and he also said that technology will blow away the schools in shortly. And I think that's quite typical of the unrealistic expectation on technology in schools. Implementing technology in school takes time. This morning I had a good experience because my students were trying to elaborate the surroundings of the school, and they had a task to make a place where students could meet. And they went out, took pictures with their mobile phones, put them in the computers, made 3D drawings of the surroundings, and then they used the computers and built in a scale with cardboard the way they wanted the surroundings in the school. And that's the way I think when they use the technology as a tool, not thinking of it as something extra, something added on, just as a tool for learning. I think that is what takes time, but what it comes to at the end. And maybe we think of technology in the wrong way. Maybe it doesn't change learning in a linear way. Maybe it only change our interpretation of what learning really is. Or maybe it's changing the way we think of what is knowing, what is worth knowing. if we have technology in the classroom. Maybe that is the big input from technology.
Lisa, what would be your...
Yeah,
good
you're not
example?
dying yet, are you? Okay, I would like to give my hope and the possibility that I would like to share with you connects to what Ulf said about the PISA and digital reading. In the PISA digital reading, we are talking about web reading. Sort of clicking hypertexts and that kind of reading. But I would like to use the word that I introduced with today, digital literacy, because I see so much hope there when it comes to using like interactive books, for example. We do have problems here in the country with results of reading comprehension just going down, 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 right? So kids need to know how to read longer, more cognitive demanding texts, because that is what PISA shows, that you need that too. And I think, and I've seen so much examples of that now, that you can really use the digital tools to motivate the kids to get into the world of longer texts and stories. So that is what I would like to share with you.
At the moment, I'm revisiting my own doctoral thesis because I'm writing a book, and Dator per elev is the name of that book. And what's really interesting in that is that all the time I find the teachers in my research material, they are fantastic in finding ways to teach for this unknown. They just throw themselves out in the deep and they explore things with the kids. And then in the end, they try to find ways to assess and sort of embrace the learning that the pupils represent in the end of a work area. And I think that's fantastic. And also at the moment I'm in this new project with preschool teachers and iPads, and I was quite frightened that I would find these iPad freak teachers that would just let the kids do lots of games and apps and just sitting still, and this really horrible view of how young kids could use digital media. But instead I yet and again see that these preschool teachers, they use it so good together with the kids' initiatives. They take the iPads out in the woods, they explore stuff, they use magnifying glass, and they use it in the atelier. I don't know what the word is in English. Yeah, in the studios, we're using arts, and they do that. It's not like they're using it as the only tool. They use it with clay and with paint and with other stuff. And I can see them sort of following the kids' interest all the time. They make films with the kids' cuddly toys and their toy cars and stuff like that. So I would just like to say that teachers and preschool teachers, they are our society's vardagshjältar, everyday heroes. Yeah. They are fantastic.
Good conclusion.
Yeah, it was fine. It was lovely to hear. And I think that it goes for us as well as teachers at the universities, I hope. I hope so, at least. Thank you so far. That was the beginning of something, wasn't it? Is there any questions from you that you want to ask urgently? Yeah, there are. Please.
We have talked about many positive things today, and I just have a simple question that although Sweden is one of the richest countries in the world, we have all the techniques, we have the best schools, but there is one subject that we are going on the wrong way, and that is maths. Now how come Sweden are losing on that subject?
Trevor, please help us out here.
This is something, I'm sorry, but let's say, this discussion is happening in pretty much every country in the world. It's happening in Ireland now. People are talking about Ireland becoming a third world country because maths is going down. Maybe, as Conrad Wolfram says, it's because what we're teaching in school isn't mathematics. We're teaching calculus. If you want to improve maths, there's research from America that shows you tell kids how the brain works. You tell them that intelligence is plastic, and that by putting in effort, they can improve their own intelligence, and their results in mathematics get better straight away, and probably in all other subjects too. And a word of caution, all the countries, pretty much all the countries from 2000 to 2006, that really put money, resources into raising maths results, their results plummeted. So I think, you know, if you want to raise results in mathematics, it's probably somewhere else in mathematics you want to look. But also maybe we need to reflect over, is it maths we're teaching in school, or is it something entirely different? People who work with math in the real world don't sit with a paper and pen.
Yeah.
They have a computer to do that. So yeah.
There was one more question also, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
I was wondering about, you've talked a lot about teachers and their assessment process, but what about the kids' role in the assessment process?
Who wants to say something about that? Anne-Marie, I think.
Of course, they know a lot about their own learning, and you have to have the children. They have their own voice, and they should use it. And they want to talk about their learning. They love to talk about what they learn, and they are proud of learning. And sometimes I think in school we should be as proud as children and let them be proud of learning, because they do learn to swim and bicycle and do everything outside school. They like to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I was thinking more along the lines of how do we make it a useful tool to develop them? How to make them, like, well, be assessing their own knowledge to know what steps to go next or where to go next.
If we show them that it is important, and we pay we go into this together with children, we will talk about it. And I think we should do that all the time.
We need to give kids the tools to be able to
Yeah.
do that as well. So like the curriculum exemplars, like having rubrics, like having worked examples, kids using Khan Academy, all of those kinds of things as well. They need those tools so they get that meta-language, so they can actually be part of the learning process. So it's really crucial that they do that.
This was the first 2 hours. I'm sorry about that, but it was the first 2 hours, and there will be God's, throwing us out of this room pretty soon. And we're pretty many people here, so we can defend ourselves. But we are not supposed to be here after 7 o'clock. This was the start of something, and I like to see it as these people, these knowledgeable, intelligent, experienced people, have asked a number of interesting questions. And now it's up to you to find answers to them. And keep asking questions as well, of course. And I think it has been great listening to you all. And I think that you all deserve lots and lots of more attention than you have had during these 2 short hours. But you know who they are. Just contact them. And thank you to Tänk Om for having this first in a series of panels. And give them a round of applause. Thank you.
So can I just wrap up by saying thanks yet again. Thanks, Patrik, for a great job as a moderator. Thanks for broadcasting this. Richard Gatarski and his friends have been helping out a lot with this. Thank you. Finally, I would just like also to thank you, the audience, of course. Thank you for coming here, sharing this with us. And as Patrik said, we will come back at least 2 times a year with a roundtable discussion like this. And we hope that most of you guys will be around not around like that, but you will be participating in April as well. We tried to figure out what on earth should we give you as some kind of a gift after this. But we decided not to give you neither wine or flowers or chocolate. So instead we invested some money into books and stuff for kids in some countries in Africa, actually, through ActionAid. So you've helped out making a better school for a bit less fortunate kids. So yet again, thank you, and thank you all for coming. Bye.
Tack för gott samarbete.